So this is going to be one of those lives where I really want people to catch the beginning, because a lot of this is going to be hopefully fundamental stuff. And like I said, I'm going to try to build and kind of layer it where each thing builds on another. I also have to tell you that I think I'm going to use 60 minutes out of the 60 minutes. There's a lot that I want to share. I never do this. I literally was sitting today and writing because I wanted it to be cohesive. I wanted it to be something that I would be sharing what has worked for me, what's been meaningful to me, what's something that, like I said, is just about me. So, it's a shtick of myself that I'm going to be sharing. So, just to start, because I do want to get started and I want to respect people's time. In opening up this topic about relationships with Hashem, I opened up basically a Pandora's box on Instagram, and I was not surprised by it, but it was still very painful to process a lot of the DMs that came in, some of which I shared, obviously, with your permission, and some of which I did not share. What I want to first start with is, why now? Why am I sharing this topic now? Why are we going to talk about it, and what am I going to share? So first of all, I know there are many lives tonight. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining this page, period. I always say that every person who's on this page is not here to have fun. They're here to grow, to learn, to hopefully find validation for their pain. And I'm just grateful for every single person who's here. So with that said, what I realized was that I was extremely comfortable on this page to talk about anything. Even hard topics related to grief, even complex grief, unresolved stuff, dealing with a parent who passed away who may have had a very complex relationship, a estranged parent passing away, really a lot of stuff I was super comfortable dealing with. And I realized that I was shying away from anything religiously based, should I say. And it made me be extremely introspective and think to myself, why? Why am I not talking about this? What is it within me that's holding me back from sharing about this topic? And not last year, oh my gosh, it feels like a year ago, but a few months ago, we actually had a training in the office by Evan Steele about religiosity within the therapy room, and it was a fascinating conversation. But one of the things that stood out for me then is he said, when someone's a clinician, and by all means, I'm just telling you right now, I'm not a clinician, and I never want to ever project myself as something I'm not. But when someone's working in the mental health field or in social services and stuff of that sort, and they're not comfortable with a particular topic, right? Let's say they say they need to shy away from anything that triggers them in a particular way. One of the things you want to see this clinician be able to do is be able to work through whatever it is that's triggering them within themselves. Why can't you touch this topic? And what I realized he brought up then is, what about the fact that for some of us, religiosity is extremely triggering for one reason or another, and therefore that's not an excuse to shy away from it. That's a reason to, so to speak, work through that and be able to see what is it that you can bring to the table. So what I really realized for me, that part of the reason that I was avoiding some of these topics here were for mainly two reasons. One was that I felt, I'm going to say this like carefully because I certainly don't want to be offensive, but I felt like bringing it up here would almost be, should I say, culturally off? I don't know why, but for one reason or another, it's something that I wasn't seeing happening a lot of. And so I felt like, okay, maybe that's something we bring up later when we're here long enough. That was one piece. And the other piece really was that I felt like, am I really comfortable going there? Because you know me enough, if you've been on the page, to know that I try to be as authentic, not because it's a word, but because it's who I am. Part of the reason that I didn't want to have anyone else join me on this live to do it together is because this is a topic that I felt I needed to share from the place that I'm in and the truth that is the truth for me. So this is all just by way of introduction, and an important introduction, to say that I really feel fundamentally that anybody within any sort of mental health field in the frum world, or anybody who's doing the kind of work that I'm doing, needs to get comfortable with every topic, and religion is just one of them. So I kind of decided I'm going to bite the bullet, and I'm just going to go right ahead with this, and I'm going to dive in. And I thank each and every person who's here, because this means that it's meaningful to you too. And I see your waves, and I see your hearts, and I really appreciate it. And I appreciate every single individual who's here. With that being said, I want to indulge you for a couple minutes on my life story and my life's journey religiously, because I think it's something that is going to play into the sort of what makes up the way I think. So it's very interesting is that I'm often asked, people after they lose someone, or, people after they've been through tragedy, doesn't everyone get angry at Hashem and stuff of that sort? And I had a very interesting take on all this, and we're going to talk about all that later. But I want to just share for me what happened for me. I grew up in a house where I'm grateful for this, is that my bread and butter was that my parents spoke to Hashem all day long. It's just what I grew up with. Sometimes people are asked, is it something that you take for granted? Yeah, because it was just part of the way my house ran, right? If my mother came home from chemo treatment and something went well, she didn't have a problem saying, thank you Hashem that I'm home a day earlier, before there was a thank you Hashem campaign. So I kind of grew up with that as a relationship-wise. And so it's very interesting that through my loss, in hindsight, and I found some of the letters, some of which I'm going to share little pieces. I wrote letters to Hashem after my mother passed away. That was part of my way of processing it. I needed to share my anger. I needed to share my sadness. I needed to share my loneliness. There was a big piece of that for me, was that there was clearly a foundation of connection. Now, that didn't mean that I wasn't angry. And we're going to talk about that later. I had a lot of questions. Now, looking at it in hindsight from a perspective of somebody now, who's in a different stage of life, a lot of my questions, even the more intellectual ones, and I'll be very open about the fact that I was an intellectual kid. I probably thought a lot more than a lot of kids my age. Part of the reason that, yes, for those asking, the live will, Mirz Hashem, be saved if my technology doesn't fail me. So I was an intellectual kid, and I was a seeker type. That was just my personality. So yeah, I was reading things that probably kids my age were not reading. I was looking, right? But I wasn't satisfied. It wasn't sitting well with me. And what I can tell you now, years later, was that this was not about getting answers. This was about filling something emotionally, by which I thought intellectually seeking the answers would satisfy me. And part of the reason that you could have logically argued with me until 2 o'clock in the morning and proven everything beyond a reasonable doubt, and it wouldn't have had any effect on me, was because there was an emotional piece in me that needed to be filled, not really an intellectual piece. And again, like I said, this is an extremely personal journey. This is not to say this is everybody's journey by any means. This is my journey, and this has shaped the way I formed my relationship. So I remember just a couple of highlights of this. In high school, I actually sat down one day. I wish I still had these papers. They were with me till a few years ago. And I wrote down 72 questions that I had hashkafically. No less than 72. Now pretty much today, I could whittle them down to probably about 3, 4, maybe even 10. And then all the rest was really subcategories of it. They were, why God? I don't like my life very much. There was a lot of, intellectual seeking kind of questions of like, I need to understand level 1, 2, and 3 before I do anything, right? There was all this. Now, at the same time, here's what I'm going to tell you. It's very strange because, like my husband says, I became a troublemaker and a nonconformist as an adult, although I'm still pretty much a conformist in a lot of ways. As a kid, I kind of was straight and narrow in a lot of ways. My former boss met a classmate of mine at a wedding, and she says she lies every day at work. She tells everybody that she was like this goody-goody in class, and she like was this conformist. There's no way. I mean, she's impossible, right? And this person said, no, you don't know. Like, really, when she was in school, she really was that way. So there was a part of me that sat in class and listened to a lot of this, and I'm not going to tell you that it didn't sit well with me, because a lot of it did. But there was this piece of me, like I said, that I didn't recognize until years later, that it was an emotional piece, not an intellectual piece. So that was, in short, my story. I got married, and I continued to learn, and I continued to teach. And in this journey, I landed in a job, which was fascinating. After I taught elementary school, I went ahead and taught high school. I went ahead and taught seminary, rather. And first I was teaching very comfortable subjects, how I taught reading in a middle school classroom, all this stuff. And then I was given the opportunity to teach a subject where I was teaching from Sfarim on particular topics. So let's say the topic was Tefillah, and I would have to teach the perspectives from different Sfarim. The idea was to get the kids to become familiar with different stylistic styles within Sfarim, and as well as exploring kind of a range of topics. And it was there that I began to really deeply question myself. As I prepared and as I was teaching, I found that there was so much within me that wasn't congruent. It wasn't. I was raising a family. I was passionate. I loved Hashem. I was able to have a relationship with something, right? And that was where I started exploring a little bit more that I needed to own this relationship, and I needed to own it from the place where I was. And what I mean by that is that I had to grow into it. I had to become a person who started at wherever she was at and continued from there. And a lot of those lessons came. And I'm going to give you just one interesting thing that's popping into my head right now. I actually was trying to find my report cards. I'm one of those crazy people who saved her elementary report cards. So my cousin tells me that's because I have straight olives to show. Don't look at my high school report cards, right? But I had these adorable straight olive report cards, except for one mark. Tefillah. You know what I got there? Straight off. I think from like 3rd grade and up, I was seeing bases. Now, you may have heard from me before that I really feel we do our children a disservice when we grade davening, because we're kind of really defeating the purpose, right? But point being, right, I was a daydreamer. I was not there in that moment. And this relationship with Hashem had to become something that I owned. And so began this kind of journey, if you will, into exploring what is it that it means for me, and kind of learning a lot. Now, I'll be 100% honest. I was chalishing for my husband to join me on this live, because a lot of the debates took place around our dining room table. I am incredibly grateful to be blessed with someone that I can debate with on this level, and that was able to really formulate what became later a lot of the toolboxes that we do on Shabbaton in terms of relationship with Hashem, and that many of you saw our girls writing about the impact of that. Unfortunately, he's out at a meeting tonight, and he's not able to do it, but he did not run away from the fact that if we were to do a part 2, which I really hope we will, he would join me for this. But I did want to credit him with some of the stuff that we've been through. So one of the first, I think I wrote this when I did it in my stories, that there are 3 basic premises when he does his workshop. And I think a lot of the questions that came in really kind of fit into these categories. And so I want to address them. The first piece that I had to own for myself is that downs in Yiddishkeit are not a bad thing. They are actually part of being a human. I was very hard on myself, and I think a lot of people are that way. And one of the things that my husband always tells the Lynx girls is that when you go into the hospital and you're looking at a heart monitor, if it's going up and down, peaks and valleys and stuff like that, the guy's alive. When you see a flatlined heart monitor, it's a very scary place to be, because that means someone's dead. When there is a spiritual heart monitor that goes up and down, has peaks and valleys, that means there is a person who is alive and kicking. They're human, and they're having their ups and their downs. So a down is not necessarily in any way indicative of something bad or something off. It's actually part and parcel of our growth. And for me, that was a tremendous relief. That was the feeling of understanding that the lows that I had, and there were many, were part of the growing process. That wasn't another person. That wasn't a different person. That was one and the same person who was struggling, went down, up, right? This is in whatever area a person struggles with, right? And there were men and women here who were sending in very different kinds of struggles that they have, some of which are similar to my struggles, some of which are completely different from my struggles, right? But that doesn't matter. The point is that when we struggle, we're basically a heart monitor that is alive and having its peaks and valleys. When we're flatlined, that's trouble. And I shared with many of you who follow the song actually that Joey Newcomb, I think it is, wrote and composed on the pasuk of Sheva Yipol Tzadik Bekam. Pasuk. I think it's a pasuk. Sheva Yipol Tzadik Bekam, right? 7 times the tzaddik falls and he gets up. And he brings there a Reb Tzaddik HaKayin, which I actually went to look up after I heard the song, because I said it's just mind-blowing, where he brings from Reb Tzaddik, and I like to bring sources to these things because this is not a matter of feelings. This is a matter of our sources backing this up, and that is, how do we call the person a tzaddik if we say the word yipol, right? If we're saying falling, that a person's having a terrible fall, and it doesn't say, by the way, oh, this is a fall that only falls into this category, like, oh, that cute little neat fall, right? Spiritual fall. No, this could be a big fall, right? Why do we call him a tzaddik? He fell, okay? He really went wrong. And you know what Reb Tzaddik says? Because they come. Because he gets up again. He gets up again and again and again. And he dusts himself off and he starts again. And so I say to every person here who wrote to me some of the most painful DMs of like, but I'm a lost cause because of X or because of Y or because of C, right? And Dr. Kazos, you're so right. You say it doesn't say stumble. It says fall, right? That is 100% what we have to tell ourselves is that's okay. That means all we got to do, and we'll discuss how, right, is get up again, right? And we can do that. So for me, the first step was acknowledging is that downs in Yiddishkeit are not a bad thing. They're part and parcel of who we are. The second thing is a little bit of a difficult thing for me to bring up here. And that is that a lot of times our parent-child relationship very much mirrors our relationship with Hashem. And I think that was true for many of you who wrote about challenges within the parent-child relationship that you have, and within the fact that some of you had very difficult relationships with your parent, and then you come to psukim like Karachim Aval Banim, well, I don't got a parent that's got much Rahmanas. Or when I tell my parent that I do something wrong, I am criticized. I have a wash down here going on. I am not loved after that. And so what happens is either subconsciously or consciously, right? We say to ourselves, well, that must be how God works. That must be how God works. The way my angry parent was. The way my parent who verbally put me down, that must be God. Because God's like parents and this is what parents are all about, right? This is where I push so strongly and why I push so strongly for working through those very real, painful traumas, very real, painful pain, right? When you work through that, not with the agenda to fix your relationship with God. That is dumb, okay? I'm sorry. But more because this is what we need in order to actually understand what are healthy parents like, so that we can understand what a healthy relationship with Hashem is like. And I want to give you an example that some of you may relate to, those of you who are parents of teenagers. Some of our teenagers, not mine, of course, but other people's teenagers, they can drive them crazy. And I'm sure nobody here relates because, like I told you, not my kids. But they could really drive them crazy. They could disappoint them. They could be hurtful towards other siblings. They could be hurtful towards their parents. They could be ungrateful. They can drive you crazy. And then they come in, and I want to give two different scenarios. And then they come in and they say, you know, by the way, I really hurt myself. I have this cut here and something like that. In a healthy, and again, obviously in a healthy parent-child relationship, any feelings I have go out the window. I want to help this child because I love them. One of the best scenarios I heard from a secular therapist was, he said to me, you know how I gauge when parents say to me, I'm worried that I don't love my kid. He says, one of the scenarios I put out, he said, and I don't tell them what I'm doing, is I say to them, you are in the water with 3 children and you have just 2 hands and they're all 3 drowning. What do you do? And most parents who are healthy give you the answer, something to the extent of, I don't know, I grow an octopus. I become 8 hands. I take one with my foot. I contort myself. Right? Most parents won't say, well, you know, that one I can do without. Right? That we're talking about healthy. And he said to me, by the way, he says, I've treated narcissistic parents who have said, well, and they've given some sort of unfortunate theory over there. But the piece of that, what am I saying, is those kids could have been really disrespectful to their parents on the shore, and yet it would never dawn on the parent to drop that kid mid-water. Right? So that's what we say when we daven. Ahavas olam ahavtanu. Ahavas olam means forever. The word olam doesn't only mean world, it actually means the word, it translates into the word forever. And many of the farm that I, you know, in prep here, is ahavas olam means unconditional forever love. That is what the Eibishter loves. That is what Hashem, that's the kind of love Hashem has for us. That does not in any way take away from the fact that when a person does something that is disrespectful to Hashem, that is hurtful to him, that is something that is not within what, in line with what he wants, that Hashem, that you can't be hurting Hashem, which we'll talk about that in a relationship. But that doesn't take away from the love that Hashem has for you. Now, to me, that is super motivating, because when I felt safe in my relationship with Hashem, then it became a dialogue. Then it became of like, I'm so sorry I disappointed you and I know I really messed up. And that allowed for such a depth and such a different kind of relationship than what we had. And this is where some of the questions came in. You know, if my parents were problematic, can I still have a relationship with Hashem? If so much of it is the parent-child relationship, you need to get help. You need to be able to work through this. You need to be in therapy for it. You need to work through that trauma so that you can actually have a real relationship with Hashem. But of course, that's not the reason we're going into the therapy help, because then it becomes a different parsha. Somebody sent a question. I don't dress Tznius, so Hashem is disappointed with me, and so why bother having a relationship, or something along those lines. And this is where, again, the answer is that Hashem has what's called a havas olam. Hashem has a forever love for us. That doesn't mean we can't hurt him with different actions. Of course it does. And that's what we have 613 mitzvahs that HaKadosh Baruch Hu commanded us to do, and that he wants us to do. And like good parents, we have certain house rules, and we have things that we would like our children to do, right? But should they not follow that, that doesn't change my love for them. It may change it may also hurt me at the same time. I may be hurting, but I still have love for them. And by the way, just for the record, on Shabbos, many of us, especially Nasach Sfarad, I believe it is, say Ahava Rabbah instead of Ahavas Olam. The difference between the two loves is that Ahava Rabbah is a tremendous love. It's a love of that kid who's just a nachas child. That kid who's just, it's such a wonderful day. even if it's not always, right? And we say that once a week. And the reason is because that's not the usual. Okay? So just know that. And this is what Hashem sees us as. Okay. The third piece that was emphasized to me and helped me in my journey was that a relationship with Hashem does not require a brick and mortar building, and it doesn't even require a siddur. So some of you have seen me connect through music. Some of you have seen me, just walk around. If you meet me on the street, my kids will probably tell you, thank you Hashem for the breeze, when they're 3 years old. And the reason is because I feel guilty that I'm not as much of a siddur person, that I'm definitely a person who talks to Hashem on a regular basis. Now Hashem doesn't only get the thank yous from me. He gets my incredible frustration sometimes, and I'm not shy to say it. I'm not shy to express my fears. I'm not shy to have any sort of dialogue. And sometimes the dialogue with a parent and a child, going back to that example, ain't all that pleasant. We have some very hard conversations. And I will tell you that Hashem has heard some really, really hard conversations with me, right? I'm not that easy kid. And you know what? I still feel innately connected at the end of those conversations. I feel heard in some way. And for me, baby, because I'm not, like I said, I'm not a major siddur person. I am a person, weirdly enough, who connects while I'm in shul. So this whole quarantine basically means that it's a really difficult piece. I will tell you also is that some of my children share my struggle, and that has a mix of guilt, because I always feel like how much of that is nature and nurture, the fact that they don't see me picking up a siddur on a regular basis, and how much of it is also just the nature that they have. But I keep saying that my goal is not to get anyone to Daven per se from the nusach that's in a siddur. My goal per se is to develop a connection with Hashem, and then that connection will play out in different ways. For some of you shared that it's through Tehillim. For some of you shared it's through davening. For some of you shared it's through music. Singing even different psukim for some of you has been a lifesaver. I'm just looking at the different DMs here. Some of you really shared some magnificent ways that allow you to connect. I want you not to feel constricted like I felt constricted, that I was a failure. My connection was somewhat less than somebody else's because I couldn't concentrate on sitting on the couch and opening a siddur. So I just want you to not have to experience the kind of pain I had then. And there were some questions that people brought up here is, how do I connect when davening is hard? Start with something simple. Start with the fact that you just want to have one line a day that you want to be able to just say, Hashem, I know you're in my life. I want my kids to have it better, but I'm dead inside. Again, most of the time when we're dead inside spiritually, it's because we have to shut off a lot of emotions. So work through that piece first in therapy, and then see where that takes you. But I think also if you're just saying is that you're not as spiritually motivated and you want your kids to do better than you, it's hard to put things on other people that we can't be, right? If I can't be something. But what I've done openly is shared with my children that this is challenging for me. It doesn't mean it has to be challenging for you. If it is, I understand you. And if it isn't, that's great. I'm so proud of you. Like, be something I'm not. By all means, be a whole lot better than I am. A whole lot different than I am. I don't use the word necessarily better, although I sure hope my kids are better than me in a lot of different ways. They all claim that, by the way, they're going to be better housekeepers. They're going to have better bedtime routines. They have so many things that they're going to be better, that they're convinced of that. Again, that's just them. I'm sure nobody else's children do that to them. But the point being is that I don't even make this a better than or less than, but you can be different than me, right? It's okay. It's nice. It's different, right? It's so hard to daven from a siddur. So again, like I said, just use your own words, connect, whatever. Go into a little corner in your house, go into the porch, go into your backyard and just say, Hashem, I just need to have a conversation with you. And I've had times where the conversation started like this. Hashem, I need to have a conversation with you about the fact that I cannot talk to you right now. I have no energy right now to talk to you. There is so much going on in my life that I cannot have a conversation with you. I don't have the emotional energy to do that. Thank you for listening. That literally was the beginning, middle, and end of the sentence. And I believe that that is a true form of tefillah, as we see in the Sfarim. Maybe I'm just too lazy, somebody says about davening. Maybe it's not an emotional block, it's just a laziness in me. You know, Dr. Kazos knows this about me. I always like to assume ignorance, not malice. I prefer to assume that you're probably struggling with something emotionally rather than labeling you as a lazy person. I don't know who you are, but if you're a follower of this page, far be it from me to assume that you're lazy. So now I want to go through a few other questions that were more grief related. And the theme of those questions, a lot of them, were about anger, right? I'm angry at God, so I can't connect with him. There were some, let me just find this here. After my mother died, I was so angry at Hashem, I cannot connect to him again. I can't daven. Are most people angry after they lose a parent? I certainly know our family is. How do you feel about anger and religiosity? Does that mean a person is less connected? So let me tell you a quick story. In the Kovna ghetto, there was a roundup one day of women and children. They were rounded up and taken off to what we assume be a death camp. The Kovna Rav was in his house and people came running in and they said, Rebbe, this town is giving up Yiddishkeit. The men are throwing their tefillins out the window. We have a bunch of people who now are not from. They're dropping their Yiddishkeit. They don't believe in Hashem. The Kovna Rav said, what? They're throwing out their tefillin out of the window is the greatest sign that they believe in God. Let me tell you why. And I want you to listen to this and take it into your own life. When you feel angry at Hashem, what you are essentially saying, what these men were essentially saying, said the Kovna Rav, is that there's only one being that I can blame for this roundup, and that's God. Kovna Rav said, look at the Ani Mamins, at the Yud Gimel Ikrim. Look at the first one. We believe that Hashem has control over every aspect of our lives. So what does anger mean? Anger simply means, anger at Hashem means, I believe you are in charge, and so I'm mad at you, right? When my toddler is angry at me for locking him out of the kitchen, it's because he knows I am the only one with the authority to lock you out of the kitchen. So essentially, anger is not only not in line with our connection with Hashem, it is an affirmation of our belief. So does that mean, by the way, that the only way to believe is to be angry? No. But that means a person who is angry needs to know that they are actually a tremendous believer, right? That's the piece that they need to know. And it's just very interesting to note something that I found fascinating, right? Somebody actually wrote to me. She says, I don't understand why we need to, I think she was trying to say like why we need to squelch anger in our religion. And I'm not sure where she picked that up from, and I'm so sorry that she got a message like that. Not only don't we squelch emotions, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the method of Shiva and understanding that the first 3 days the mourner screams and cries. The next 4 days the mourner sits Shiva and doesn't, right? Hashem didn't say, listen, I took away this person because it's a good plan. Now everybody go on and be happy because this was my plan. That's not what Hashem says. Hashem says, I took it away. I took this person away. That's part of a bigger plan, which we'll talk about soon. That does not mean I expect of you living in a Gashmiistic world, in a real world here, where you don't see my plan, to be merry about it. No, Hashem says, we have an Avelus process. You're going to mourn the fact that you had a loss. So there's a very big reality here on a halachic basis in the fact that emotions are there. We also know that Ein Adam Noikef Etzbaya Milamata Ad Shemachrizim By Lamala, right? Nobody can move a pinky if not for HaKadosh Baruch Hu up there saying, move the pinky, right? There's nothing that we can do. And yet what happens if we stub our toe, which was clearly planned up there? We're not allowed to say ouch, right? When we experience loss, there's tremendous sense of anger. This is not fair. This is just not fair, right? That is an initial gut reaction of a human being. And remember when we talked about ups and downs? Like, you're human. You're not dead. And so you're going to have some sort of feeling and emotion. It's just weird, by the way, that the same people who will tell you that anger is the antithesis of religion have no problem sometimes being angry at a neighbor who blocks the driveway when, excuse me, we know the person who is angry is like they are serving idolatry. What does that mean? That means I'm angry at the neighbor. What does it mean? In that moment, one person believes that the neighbor did this without God controlling it, right? So if they're angry at the neighbor, what they're basically saying is this wasn't planned by God. This was planned by the neighbor, right? Which we can talk again about relationships a different time. But the idea is nobody has a problem. Nobody thinks that somebody is not religious if they're angry at their neighbor for blocking the driveway, right? What is it? We're expected to have human emotions after a loss, after a sad piece. HaKadosh Baruch Hu expects for human emotions. One of human emotions is anger, and it's real, and it can be felt, and it usually means, like I said, that when you're angry with Hashem, you have a connection with Hashem enough that you believe that He is ultimately the one who is in control of the situation that you have. There is also just an interesting piece to note. Somebody asked me about, and I meant to cover this before, does it mean that when a person works through their emotional health and their struggles, that if those are all worked through, they will be spiritually healthy? The answer to that is no. Spiritual health doesn't come by osmosis. Okay, so it's not like, if we work through all emotional stuff, the spiritual piece will come into it. What I've learned from my own experience and from the experience of many, many Links girls is that this is still very hard work, right? They're two separate works. However, the emotional piece lays the foundation sometimes, right? For instance, if somebody's emotionally shut off because they've been through trauma, connection to Hashem, relationships, if they can't have a relationship with humans because they can't open their hearts to be vulnerable enough or to connect enough, it's going to be really difficult to have that kind of connection with a being that you don't see, right? So if you can lay the foundationally in the relationship with people, then oftentimes that gives you the foundational tools to now begin working through spiritual peace. But that doesn't mean it happens by osmosis, right? Spiritual work is a hard piece of work, and everybody will have their path that they need to take in order to do that work. For some people, it will be intellectually learning. For other people, it will be through music. For other people, it will be through, healing themselves emotionally and feeling loved and being exposed to people, almost in a form of spiritual exposure therapy, if I will, being exposed to better people who have better outlooks on religion than you may have had before, may be part of your journey. Whatever it is, right? They're diverse. There's two different things, right? But they are somewhat interconnected in the fact that one can lay foundationally to the other. The Baal Shem HaKadosh says on this, by the way, in his Sfarim, is that a gezunte guf is a gezunte neshama. A healthy, and by that we mean physically and emotionally healthy body is what creates a healthy neshama. So yes, by the way, if you have a migraine and you are feeling sick, oftentimes does religious struggle and belief issues come up then? Absolutely, because your body is in a weakened state, right? And the same way is when our body is in a weakened state emotionally, yes, we are more vulnerable to a spiritual challenge. That's kind of the best way to put it. I wanted to go through the other questions. I wanted to make sure I didn't forget anybody's things, and then I want to just go back to one piece. Okay, so let's go to some of the real grieving questions that were submitted. Okay, what about the people who become overly spiritual after loss? I almost didn't want to answer that question. And I almost didn't want to answer it because, like many other things that we spoke about here, it's a really hard piece to address. It's hard because I know the devastating effects of this. I know that when I have a mother or a father who lost a spouse and is raising a family, and after that loss, their way of coping is through connecting to shiurim and through their tehillim to the point where they have a hard time connecting to the fact that my child's play comes in the middle of the shir, or my children want a different kind of supper that may take me a little bit more time to prepare, and then I'll have to give up this spiritual piece, and it becomes a struggle for them. And naturally, their children become resentful of the fact that spirituality took away from me, or what they perceive as spirituality, and so that kind of creates a little bit of a mess, right? Or when religiosity or spirituality is used in a way that is just devastating, whether it's a put down, whether it's the fact that in a fit of rage somebody would tell a child that, like one person wrote here, is that what you did now means Hashem will never love you again. I want to hug whoever this is. That's just not true. So experiencing those kind of spiritual, religious kind of bumps in the road, if you will, could really, really do a job on someone. It could, and it has, and we know it, and we've seen it. And if somebody here is throwing themselves into spirituality as a form of like self-soothing, it's not a problem per se. It's just a question of quantity, and it's a question of what is it taking precedence over. So every parent here needs to be careful. I don't say never daven when your kids are around, but I mean is that if there's a consistent pattern that at the time that your children need you, or at the time that your family needs you, there's something spiritual going on for you, that might mean that you want to run away from what's happening here. And that's what happens sometimes after a loss. A few people sent in, my mother's really throwing herself into all these things and she's forgetting about us. It's her coping mechanism of what she's dealing with. Now, it's not a healthy coping mechanism. It's a coping mechanism. Now, how to heal from having been in this sort of home environment where that may have been hurtful to you as a child. A lot of this is through healing that our parents may not be perfect individuals. They may have made mistakes. This may have been one of them. Sometimes it's understanding that people were struggling with different things at different times, and it made them make decisions that weren't necessarily the smartest. What if it's currently happening right now and you want to find a voice to be able to say that? I think what we need to ask ourselves is, what is the person capable of, and what could be a very specific request? Meaning to say, if you feel that, let's say, in the morning until I leave to school, Ma, I need you to be present, so that we're not saying nu and you're showing me 14 different places where the peanut butter might be. That's reasonable, right? But when somebody comes to a parent where this is their coping mechanism, especially a single parent, right? Any unhealthy coping mechanism, when we just pull the plug on it in 2 seconds and we don't give any sort of strategy here, it can sometimes boomerang with a different kind of unhealthy coping mechanism. So I just would caution. I would say we need help. I would say that we should be getting this parent some sort of help. Usually the best way is to find a very healthy Rav, because generally those people will not take it from a mental health professional. They will want to hear it from a spiritual professional. Dr. Kaz was saying it's not the religion that hurt you, it's the way the religion was being used. Perfect. See, you always say it better than me. Then there was another question about, okay, where is this one? I'm sorry. Okay. After I lost my parent, just trying to see, this is the same one. No. Okay, here we go. After I lost my parent, I began to feel that Hashem takes the best people, so why bother being the best? This is $1 million question that is posed a lot of times on Shabbaton. I've heard many different answers over the years, some of which sat well with me, some of which didn't. And that's because, like I said, I can only speak for myself of what would sit well with me. So I want to share something that may be a bit cliche, but somehow the imagery of this particular story sat well with me. apologize that I don't remember the source of this, but it definitely is in one of the Svarim. Imagine a person comes from the Congo, in the deserts in Africa, from living in the wild with no normal civilization, shows up in New York, lands up in a tour of Columbia University Hospital. He comes in and he's taken to the cardiology unit, to the cardiac unit, to where there's an open heart surgery taking place, and he is in shock. He comes in there, they're chopping up this person, they give him anesthesia, they tie him to a bed as far as he's concerned. They sedate him in a way that he has no rights anymore. They cut his body open and they pull out a heart. And he goes back and reports at the Congo, these are cannibals. And the reason that sat well with me is because I would definitely be that kind of person. Because, and we can't even fault him, because coming from the Congo, where he didn't understand this, right? What else do you think until you explain it to him that he would know? Nothing, honestly. And that's very much the example that I'm going to give you. There's so much that I can try to logically explain. And like I'm going to go back to this piece that I started with a little bit about the fact that intellectually, I could probably go back and forth on EIF with you 14 times. I could go through Tzaddik, Baralei, Russia, V'Tzayvlei. A Tzaddik has it, harder, and why is the Russia having it going well for himself. I could go back and forth with you on sources. We could probably have a field day, and it would do nada. And the reason for that is because a question like this, basically, to me, I mean, if you meant it literally, then okay. A question like this is, to me, saying I'm in pain. I lost one of the best people in my life. A bunch of people around me who were left, I don't know. If God had to pick, he could have picked someone else, not this one person who was my rock. And then, are you joking? I'm hearing around me, he was such a good person. This is what happens. You know what? Going back to the anger piece, I'm done. So my answering this with a logical explanation, and I beg you, if you're a teacher or a parent, don't go there. It's tempting, but don't go there. Because if you're actually going to answer the question, you most likely aren't addressing what the pain is. And this pain is real. It really is real, right? And so when I'm saying, I'm going to give you this piece about the fact that we don't understand it. There is a lot out here that is like the Congo man coming into Columbia University. That's just the life. It didn't satisfy me then. It satisfies a piece of me because I get it. And there's a piece of me that it kind of made sense. And at the same time, when I'm angry or when I'm sad, that's not going to do it. What's going to do it is validating that there is pain in this world. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu never wants us to believe that this is a world that's minus pain. I just took my kids for antibody testing, okay? Shul requested that every family goes and gets antibody testing. They needed it for their documents that they're working on. Okay, all good. I did not, and this is just a parenting thing, I did not tell my kids it doesn't hurt. I think that's just ridiculous, right? Because it hurts, okay? Obviously, as an adult who's had many blood tests, I don't go crazy from blood tests. My husband, on the other hand, by the way, is petrified. For him, it's like, just there's a lot of fear associated with blood tests, right? I don't tell my kids it's not going to hurt. I tell them it's going to hurt, and we still got to do it, right? There are times in life where I just have to tell myself, and certainly tell other people, this hurts. This hurts. This loss that you just had right now, it hurts. And I'm not in any way going to take that away and say, whatever happens to you is good and stuff like that. You know what? If that works for your internal talk, and I'm sure it does for some people, then be my guest and say that to yourself if that works for you. Thank you, Amy. Never lie to kids about possible pain. Thank you. Yes, I really think that's like a disservice. And I'm not going to lie to you and say to you that this loss that you went through and this stuff that you experienced, that you're experiencing, it's all for the good. That doesn't mean, Khalila, that I don't believe that there is a plan and a purpose. And I think we spoke about giving pain a purpose. And that HaKadosh Baruch Hu plans every single part of our day and stuff of that sort. 100%. The anger can also be a piece of that. The sadness can also be a piece of that. I'm still grieving. I'm still hurting. It hurts, right? And that's okay. And so it's okay when you say that he takes the best. You know, why should I be good and stuff like that. What that's basically saying is, I'm hurting so much that this best person was taken from me. And what I want to just say to you is, it hurts. It hurts when the person you love is taken from you. It does. And I think the invalidating of that sometimes leaves us more stuck, right? We sometimes feel like if the whole world is invalidating this pain, is saying, yeah, but you have to know, you have to know, you have to know, you have to know, then somehow there's a piece of you that remains stuck of having to prove that your pain is real, right? So for me, I think the best piece is when you validate the pain, then you know that I've given this pain space to be, and then the healing can begin, wherever that healing takes you. Somebody wrote, grief equals to love. That's right. When you love someone very much, the grief can be this much. And the complex grief when you don't like someone very much can be that very much. So I think this was more or less the piece that I wanted to share. I got very passionate here. I got very raw. I got very vulnerable because I feel deeply that there's so much within us that has this pain. And going into a Yom Tov like Shavuos, I feel like when you have a complex relationship with Hashem at this point of your life, that when you go into a Yom Tov that is all about Hashem giving us the Torah and Hashem being part of our lives and stuff like that, it kind of brings off such complicated and confusing emotions sometimes. And what I just want to gift you with is the knowledge that having ups and downs is a piece of being a Jew. It's a piece of being connected to Hashem. It's not a flatline heart that's dead. I want to give you the ability to heal from a poor parent-child relationship, or to use a good parent-child relationship as a model for how much unconditional love Hashem has for us. Ahavas Eilam, it is a forever love that the Eibishter has for us, and therefore we may disappoint him, we may do things that are wrong, but he still loves us. That doesn't mean we should do wrong things, right? If a person catches his son vandalizing cars, that doesn't bring him happiness. Does he love the child less? Will he try to get him help, right? We're able to hold both emotions equally at the same time. And the third piece that I really want you to know is that a relationship with Hashem does not require a shul, it does not require a yeshiva, it does not require a Beis Yaakov, it does not require a siddur. It requires you sitting wherever you are right now saying, Hashem, we need to have a conversation. And even if that's where it stays, and even if it's about, Hashem, I can't even talk to you because I'm so angry, or Hashem, I really just want to thank you because things are going well, or Hashem, I just don't know what to do, don't know what to say. This is also confusing. I don't know where to start. I have writer's block in terms of talking to you, right? That's talking. That's a connection. If my kid comes to me and says, I don't even know what to tell you, but I don't want to talk to you right now, that's basically saying, I love you and I kind of want to have a relationship with you, but I'm mad at you right now. We need to have a conversation about that. My arms are open wide. And that is so much about the relationship that Hashem has with you. This is really what it's all about. This is how it is. And I just want to give you that piece of myself, that piece of what this struggle has been for me and where it's taken me. And, I'm afraid in a certain sense that I come off, off of this live to some degree where it's all neatly solved and wrapped up with a bow. And it's just like, wow, we've got this wondrous, gorgeous, fabulous, stable relationship right now. And what I will tell you is that couldn't be further from the truth. Right? I have days where I sit there, like the day that I'm doing the live like this, where it like puts me in a zone where I'm like, wow, this is going great. Like, I really feel connected. And I promise you that I will probably wake up tomorrow or the next day and it's raining and I had plans and dumb things. See, doesn't have to be tragedy. And I have a headache, so I'm worn down physically. Remember, we spoke about a gesunte guf as a gesunte neshama, right? And somebody messed with my bank and charged me twice, and I will get out of bed and there will be a piece of me muttering of, what does he want from me now? Which, by the way, it's also a form of tefillah. It's like, Hashem, I don't know what you want from my life. It's true. I don't know what you want. And that anytime we experience anger, it's a belief, it's an exhibition of the belief that there is only one being who controls every single aspect of our lives. And when we experience sadness, that's because Hashem created us as humans to live in an Olam HaGashmi, where we are expected to have very human-like feelings and emotions and behaviors. And to put an end to that, or to shut that off and stuff like that, by the way, affects a person spiritually. Because when you shut off all negative emotions or positive emotions, when you shut off all negative emotions, you shut off positive emotions as well. And when you shut down negative emotions, you shut down the ability to be spiritually connected. Because when we can't emotionally connect with people in a healthy way, there's just, I can't imagine. I shouldn't say there's no way, because I'm sure there are people who can, but it's really hard for me to see that there could be a healthy relationship with Hashem when a person cannot have a healthy relationship with people. So this was draining. This was wonderful. I completely am thrilled that I did this. And I cannot, like I said, I can't thank each of you enough for being on this platform, on this page with me, for giving me the opportunity to be able to share something like this with you. And if this could be of any help to you or anyone that you know, I'm going to try to save this as an IGTV. We also try to save this afterwards on YouTube, on the Links channel there. And I have literally a minute remaining, so I'm going to end this live. But thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here.